How can you find owner financing properties or seller financing properties? All right, guys, seller financing properties, how to run across them, why they're important, and how to find them. We're going to talk all about this. Thank you for the question. If you've got a question you'd like to have me answer, type it in the comments below and I'll create a video just like this for you and for all my other amazing subscribers. So seller financing, let's just talk a little bit about this. Why is seller financing important? Well, you may be in a situation where you're gonna have a problem getting a loan from a bank. Maybe you're self-employed, maybe you've had some medical issues or some challenges, maybe your debt to income ratio isn't in the perfect parameters that banks and credit unions actually want. So you're going to struggle to find residual income and find passive income if you're not able to buy properties. Well, one of the things you can do to buy properties is actually buy properties seller finance. What does seller finance mean? It basically means that the bank is acting as the lender. So rather than getting a lender, you're actually using the bank or you're using the seller as the lender rather than going and getting a new lender. Now there's multiple ways to do this and you're in luck. I am at the whiteboard today and we're going to walk through a few of these examples. But before I do, if you're enjoying this so far, hit that thumbs up button. I really like it. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. So let's take a look here. So let's talk a little bit about this seller financing, okay? So the idea here is there's a few scenarios. One of the scenarios is that a seller owns the property free and clear. So if the property is free and clear, that basically means this house right here, let's say the house is worth $150,000, the loan on the property is zero. Okay, so there's no loan on this property. So how could a deal like this be structured is quite simply you're saying, hey, seller, if I gave you the $150,000, what are you going to do with it? And he may say, well, I don't really know, or we're going to use it for some expenses. And you'll say, well, rather than me giving you $150,000, why don't I pay you every single month some money and it'll pay it down? So this may be structured of saying, I'll pay you $1,000 a month. And I will pay that. Now, one of the things when you're doing seller financing is you can avoid the conversation about interest. You could say, hey, I'll pay you $1,000 a month, and I'll pay that to you for 150 months, and then you'll have it paid off. Well, guess what I just did? I just saved myself probably close to $100,000 in interest expenses by doing that type of a strategy. That can be really good. Now, if they want some interest, then you can talk about interest, or this works out really well. Sometimes if I'm going to buy a property, let's say they want $150,000 for this property, but if I want to flip this property, I need to buy this property around $130,000. But they are set on that $150,000. Like $150,000, that's what they have to have. They won't come off it. And you say, okay, well, I'll give you $150,000. Now I can't flip this property, but guess what? I'm going to name the terms. I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month. I don't know what it's going to rent for. Let's just pretend like this rents for $2,000. I know those numbers aren't right, but let's just say it rents for $2,000. So you say, I'll give you $1,000. Or if you want to make it more realistic, say, I'll give you $500 a month. And it rents for $1,000, so I know I'm going to be in the money. Well, what I just did is I overpaid by $20,000 for this property. However, if you look at the interest rate of what you are going to be paying, and let's just use a 5% interest rate here. Let me just get my calculator out and let's talk about. Now, I'm just going to use like a simple interest rate here. So let's say that the $150,000, if I times that by 0.05, that's going to tell me what my annualized interest rate is. My annualized interest for this would be $7,500, right? That's how much I would be paying in interest. Now, if I did that for 30 years, I'm going to end up paying $225,000 in interest. Now, keep in mind, it's amortized, so not all that's there. So let's just cut it in half and just make it $100,000. So by going up $20,000 in my purchase price, I save myself $100,000 in interest over a 30-year loan. That's just approximates. I'm trying to teach principles here, so if my math's a little bit off, don't worry about that. Grasp the principle of what we're talking about here. So what I just did is I traded $20,000 in price to save $100,000 worth of equity. And this is where a lot of real estate investors get mixed up. See, for me, it's either price or it's terms. if you want to say, I'll pay any price for a property. You'll say, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'll pay any price for a property. Let's just say the property is worth $500,000. And I've got a seller that's being super smart. And he's like, okay, well, I want $1 million for my house. You know what I would say to him? I'd say, great, I'll pay you $1 million for the house. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay you $1 a day until the $1 million is paid off, which basically means I'm paying $30 a month, right? And then I'll eventually pay off your $1 million in like 1,000 years. But see, what do I care, right? If I'm getting $30, if I'm paying $30 a month, which is unrealistic, I get that, but I can rent the property for $10,000. I just made an exorbitant spread. I'm less worried of what I owe and what the price is, especially if I'm not signing any type of personal guarantees, which I typically don't do when I'm talking about a seller financing type situation. Now, there's a few other different types of seller financing situations. I don't want to deep dive into all these, but you have what's called an all-inclusive, which is a situation where, let's say the property is $150, and let's say that the seller has a loan for $75. So then what you can do is do an all-inclusive, or what's called a wraparound, where what happens is you do a new loan for $150, you make a payment to an escrow company. That escrow company is then going to be paying the $75,000 loan, and the difference is going to get paid out to the seller. So that's what we're dealing with here with something like that. There's also a situation where you can give a down payment and then you just pay the bank directly and just take over the payments. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but the question that was asked here is, how do I find owner financing homes? And so my solution to that is just like any other type of marketing. What you're going to want to be doing is you're going to want to be finding properties just like normal. And then if you can't come to terms, or if you want to ask for seller financing, you just simply ask them. The way that I typically do this is, if I can't come to terms on a cash price that I want to pay for the property, I ask them how much they want, and then I start talking about terms, meaning having them seller finance the property, which is a great way for me to get rental properties. So let's talk about this in a very easy way. How do we go about finding properties? Well, my solution to this is, number one, you determine your area. How do you determine your area? Well, I like to fish where the fish are. And the way I do that is by seeing where's the most activity. So what I do is some research, and I find out where the most number of cash buyers are. And then what I'm doing is I'm saying those are the zip codes I want to be working. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. The second thing that I'm going to do is I am going to get some software. And actually, the software is needed to determine that area. We like Investor's Edge, but I'm going to get some software, and specifically software that will help me with some driving. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start driving. I'm going to drive, and I'm going to look for properties that have problems. And when I find properties that have problems, I'm going to note they're there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip trace. Skip tracing is basically getting the phone numbers, the email address, and the landlines for people that are those properties that I've seen that have problems. And when I'm driving, I'm finding properties that are in need of work, because they're probably going to have to sell to an investor like me and not be able to list on the MLS unless they want to spend the money. The idea here is a property can't sell to another buyer unless it's in good condition, if they're getting FHA type financing or conventional financing, which is what most people are doing. So then I skip trace. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call. And I'm going to keep calling, and then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to drive, and I'm going to skip trace and call. This is kind of a repeating cycle that I'm going to go through time and time again. And then eventually I'm going to end up on an appointment inside the house. And when I'm an appointment inside the house, I'm going to say, I'll give you $130,000 for your property. And they say, I can't take $130. What do you want? Well, I want $150. Fantastic. I'll give you $150, but this is what I need to do. And they may say, well, I can't do that if you're going to pay me $150. And you say, great, I'll give you $160 because I know I'm going to save $100,000 in seller financing. So the whole thing, all in all here, the idea is, if you want to find these seller financing homes, you follow this system of determining the area, getting your software in place, driving, skip tracing, making your calls, and going on appointments. And then when you're there, you're going to find these types of scenarios that'll work better for them and better for you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing because I know you are going to love the content we put out. We put out a video every single day. Now, if you want to use my motivated seller worksheet, which is basically the questions you should be asking people once you get somebody that's motivated to sell on the phone, I'll give you a free copy of that. All you've got to do is text your email address to 435-294-0433. Text your email address over there. I have another video on how to get 100% financing. If you want to check that out, I'll put it on the screen and link it in the comments below, as well as a blog post of 16 ways to get 100% financing on your first fix and flip. Check it out. They're in the comments below. Otherwise, make it a very profitable day, and bye for now.